Our next presentation is with Mark Smith. Mark is the MLA for Devon-Drayton Valley, and he's going to bring you a perspective of the role of collaboration in the building and development of the industry. Mark, all yours. By the way, if you do want to raise questions, though, raise your hands with the card, and we'll come pick them up.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know if 7 years ago I would have seen myself standing on this stage talking about hemp. My name is Mark Smith. I'm the MLA for Drayton Valley Devon. And prior to being an MLA, I was a teacher in Drayton Valley for 30 years. And when I started thinking about today, Manny came to me and said, "We want to talk about collaboration." And I said, "I can talk about collaboration." And I thought I would do for you today what my parents used to do back in the 60s and the 70s when we would get together and we would have a slide presentation, with the little slides and the slide machine, and you'd go through all your holidays. Well, I want to take you through about 6 or 7 years of my involvement in hemp, and I want you to take away one thing today, and that is that we're about, as we've said already, growing an industry, but it happens with collaboration. So I thought I would start with, okay, there we go. We've got the first slide up, and I hope I have figured out how to do this after 30 years of teaching. The first thing that I want you to remember is this, that from my perspective, it all started in 2015 when I was elected in the general election for Drayton Valley Devon and as a part of the official opposition in the Wild Rose Caucus. And one of the things that I've learned over my last 6 or 7 years is that almost nothing happens without collaboration. And it's a part of one of those little pieces of the puzzle that all get put together that eventually add up to success. So for me, it started with a meeting with the town of Drayton Valley in Brazeau County immediately after I was elected. And one of the things that the town had done was to start a thing called the BioMile. And one of the first things that Manny Dale came to me and said was, "Mark, you have to focus in on hemp." And in working with the Brazeau County, these are municipal partners among many that I have in my constituency, but 2 that started off very early in this hemp industry saga. Well, one of the things that Drayton Valley did was that they had created a thing they called the BioMile. We had a warehouser in our little town that had closed down a part of their operations, and they were looking for some way of recapturing some of that tax revenue. And so one of the things they did was they set some land aside for a BioMile, looking to bring in companies that would be working in biocomposites. And one of the first people that was involved in that was Manny Dale as the town manager. And so when I got elected, one of the first things Manny did was he came up, shook my hand, and said, "We got to talk." And that was the start of that journey. Now, I had the chance to work with the town of Devon. Devon is in my constituency. And the town of Devon had a conference where they were looking at visioning for their future, for where they wanted to go. And one of the things that I brought to their attention was that they had talked a lot about oil and a lot about tech and a lot about a lot of the other sectors of the economy. They hadn't talked about agriculture. And that got the mayor, the man, Stephen Lindop, who's the man in the striped shirt there, we got talking. And one of the things that Stephen is, he's a big man, big vision, saw what could be. And one of the things that we did was we on our own dime, went over to Europe and began looking at opportunities in hemp in Europe. And part of that was going to open some doors that later on we'll talk about. Part of that collaboration is working with government. And I have to say that part of this, where we are today, can go to the government that was under the NDP. I can remember meeting with ministers, Shannon Phillips and with Shea and with Minister Cartier here, and talking to them about the idea of hemp and how we could move forward on hemp. And we were able to get Minister Cartier to come out to Biocomposites Group, which is in Drayton Valley, and one of the first commercialized businesses to get involved in industrial hemp, and for him to come out and see the line that they make for their matting products. And so here you see a picture of Minister Cartier, and you see the mayor of Drayton Drayton Valley there, Glenn McLean. And in the front, they were looking at one of their matting products that they were using for erosion control in the ditches. And we got a chance to see that actually being grown. Well, one of the things that Shannon Phillips actually we sat down one day and she said, you know, if you're going to move forward, you need to have an industry spokesperson. You need to make it more than just about Drayton Valley. And so one of the things that we did was we sat down and we created I forget what we call it, something like the Drayton Valley Devon Regional Hemp Trade Alliance or something like that. And there you can see the picture of one of our first meetings there. And it's got many of the mayors and from Kalmar and Thorsby and Breton and councillors there, trying to push this vision of creating a supercluster for hemp in the Drayton Valley Devon area. But we've also seen over the last 6 or 7 years us working federally. And so here you can see Amarjeet Sohi and many of the councillors from the then town of Drayton Valley meeting and talking about, and Dan Madlung's there, talking about industrial hemp. I have to say that one of the people I've enjoyed working with most is Laurie Jo Graham. We went on a trip to Europe, and she helped to open my eyes to the whole idea of industrial hemp and to the research that's being done and all of the studies that were available to us and some of the strategic planning and the funding that we needed to look at. And some of the government parts of the government, Alberta Innovates and Innotech and all the parts that the Alberta government had played, and she sort of opened my eyes to how the government interfaces with industrial hemp. And then we went on an international business travel again in about 2017. And we were looking at ways that we could interface industrial hemp with some of the other technologies that are out there. The Secan container that you see there is from a plant that you can see the line there that was making foam and carbon fiber boarding that was as strong as, they were using it to replace the flatbeds of semis, and they made Secan containers out of it. We were wondering if there was some interface between industrial hemp and so Biocomposites Group was there, the town of Drayton Valley was there, Just Biofiber, Alberta Agriculture, the Alberta Hemp Alliance. So we had a chance to really start to look at developing the international relationships that may be important. And of course, we brought some of those people back the next year or a little bit later, back into Canada. And there we had them tour Dan's business again in Biocomposites Group in Drayton Valley. And there you can see some of the dignitaries that were there. So, Bart Guillon, Reeve of Brazeau County is there. And some of the people from Drayton Valley and Corey Peebles and others that just trying to develop those relationships and develop that collaboration that would allow us to grow this industry beyond an idea. And so you can see that I've had a chance to meet so many people and to make so many relationships, and it's been an absolutely wonderful thing to be a part of. But one of the things that's been really interesting for me is the capacity for businesses to interact with each other and to develop the relationships that would grow the industry. And there are fits and starts, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But here's a picture of Graphene Leaders Canada, a business out of Edmonton that was working on a project with Dan and Biocomposites on using graphene and hemp to be able to filter water. And it was a really interesting idea and project, and quite honestly, I believe that this could be a way of dealing with one of the issues in the coal industry and the filtration of selenium out of the water. And so there we saw and spent a day in July looking at that technology. Well, in my constituency, we have a little town called Breton, and outside of Breton are the Breton plots, and it's a part of the University of Alberta. That's where they do agricultural research. It's been one of the I believe it's the longest research facility or plot in Alberta. It started way back in, I think, like the 1920s. And I met with a gentleman by the name of Dick Pervine, who has grown industrial hemp on that plot, and has been, working on different strains of hemp and looking at ways that we can integrate that into the agricultural sector in Alberta. Fascinating stuff, and I really appreciated the day that I spent with him touring the facility and looking at the opportunities that were coming out of there. Well, of course, part of the people, none of this happens. Today doesn't happen, and this industry doesn't grow to this point without a wide range of people investing time and energy and experience and knowledge into the industry. And Initech Alberta and Jan here, invaluable and to growing the industry. Drayton Valley has really taken a lead in a lot of ways. They've had, Edmonton International Airport, I am dyslexic, but yes, we've had conferences here, and we've had other parts around Alberta, NAPI and others that have been working together to try to grow the industry. And so when you take a look at the town of Drayton Valley, they even had in 2018 a hemp innovation program where they invited businesses in to give them their best ideas for how we could use industrial hemp. And I think it was a $5,000 prize. And there's Ralph Van Assen, a former mayor of Warburg, and very much a part of the early days of the Alberta Hemp Alliance. So part of growing this industry has been trying to get a provincial spokesperson, advocacy group for industrial hemp. And so that small little group that we started in the Drayton Valley Devon area has grown into the Alberta Hemp Alliance. We've seen all of the industry partners sort of come together and move together into the Alberta Hemp Alliance. And so for all of those people that stood up earlier, thank you for the time and the effort that you have put into developing this industry and developing this advocacy group. I really believe that it's a very important thing for us to be able to have if we're going to bring the needs of the industry to various levels of government, whether it's municipal, federal, or provincial. The Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance and the AHA, very happy to see them working together to represent the industry, not only in Alberta, but across Canada. And of course, there's Corey, we can see the continued growth that happened in 2020, and with Biocomposites receiving some funding from the provincial government to put in a decorticator and to increase their business and to commercialize. And the announcement that we had, and then here's another minister coming out to Biocomposites Group, former Minister of Agriculture, Devin Dreeshen, and the announcement that we made around the application of monies from the Alberta government to getting that decorticator working and functioning in Alberta. And of course, as a result of that, you now see a business that is exporting around the world. And some of the products that they're producing there, and whether it's a herd or whether it's the long fiber, we've got people working in Alberta and people that are making a living because of the foresight of Dan and his wife and all of the people that work at Biocomposites Group, and it's just it's an amazing thing to see it all come together and actually produce jobs and to sell products around the world. And finally, you heard today the announcement with regards to Blue Sky and Inca. And so just a couple of pictures of us meeting at the legislature as we prepared to meet with, I call him the godfather of industrial hemp. Tim Schultz is the chief of staff for the Minister of Agriculture. If you want to know, if somebody wants to know something about hemp, he can probably tell you. He's been involved in it literally from day one. If you want to know how we got the facility in Vegreville, well, go talk to Tim Schultz. If you want to know anything about hemp, you talk to Tim Schultz. And so here we are meeting with Tim and the ministry and putting forward our pitch for the announcement that we've seen today. And so, I guess the one thing that I would suggest is that none of these things happen without the relationships and without the collaboration that comes from those relationships. And yeah, you need money, and yes, you need foresight, and you need vision, and you need all of these things, and you need to be willing to take a risk, and all of the things that all of you guys understand. But honestly, it doesn't happen without the collaboration of people that have the industry at heart and want to see it move forward. Where do we need? Where are we going? Well, as far as I can see, and I'm not an expert on this, but we need more farms like Quattro and Never Idle and all the farms across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Western Canada to start looking at this crop as an alternative for growing. And I think we're going to need to grow our hectares significantly if we're going to produce the products that we can and should in this province. I think we need to start looking at more funding from the Alberta government. We have invested I think it's something like $116 million into increasing the irrigation down in southern Alberta, and I think that's going to have an impact on the sector. We're going to need more licenses to be able to grow. We're going to need to address the federal regulations and the red tape surrounding this industry. We're going to need to make sure that we have the harvesting industry, the farmers are going to, the harvesting machinery that people are going to need, and even something as simple as farming insurance for hemp crops. So there's lots of things that we have to tackle yet, but I believe that we have the people in this room, we have the people in government, we have the people at various levels of government. We now have an advocacy group. We have the capacity to move this industry forward. And today, I just think back to the first conversation I had about this with Manny, and he said, "Mark, think of a billion-dollar industry. Think of an industry that is employing farmers in agriculture. And then the secondary industries that grow from that, and the super clusters that we can build." And he was right. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be here today to see some of that moving down the path. So I hope you've enjoyed my slideshow. I hope you've seen some of the history that we've had here. And I don't know if you want to take questions, Perry, or not, but fire away if you've got any. Either that or I give you a test, because I'm very capable of doing that as a teacher.
Are you optimistic?
Pardon me?
Are you optimistic?
Oh, very optimistic. I think that you have, I think as you can see, the eye of the provincial government is on this industry at a provincial level. The things that I love to see converging, and I have a little checklist in my head when I start looking at, businesses come across our desks all the time as MLAs, and they've all, and I don't say this, in any negative way, they've all got a good idea, and they're all passionate. But there's a checklist in my head of things that we have to have. And when I take a look at this industry, I see an industry that has the potential to produce goods that the world wants, and to do so from a sustainable position where people and jobs and money will be created, and where we can address the environmental issues of carbon. And this industry checks a lot of the boxes that are in my head. And so, yeah, I'm very optimistic for this industry. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. You mentioned red tape reduction, and I think that's a concern of just about everybody. What is the province doing to try and reduce red tape reduction? And are they lobbying the federal government in any way, shape, or form in order to work on red tape reduction?
Yes. That's being handled by people, not by me, okay? But yes, the conversations are happening. We're aware of it. Yeah, red tape reduction is going to be really important. I think our government, you can see that we've made a very conscious decision over the 3 years that we've been in power to try to reduce red tape. Now, there's a reason for regulations, and they have to be there, and they protect people, and they protect industries. But you do have to you do have to have the capacity to do business, and you can't have those regulations interfering to the point where you can't do business. I think we've received what was it, an A+ or an A- or something like that from the Canadian Taxpayers Association on red tape reduction. But yes, and it's one of the conversations that we're having, although we do have to work with another level of government, the federal government, and trying to mesh the agendas is not always easy, but we're aware of it, and we're going to try. So one of the things that I would like to ask the Alberta Hemp Alliance and the Canadian Hemp Trade Association to do is to work with us and to identify those regulations that absolutely need to change. And I know we've talked about going from placing it under health to under agriculture. That's going to be a big ask. Okay, we've got to move a lot of people's heads and minds on that one. But that's why we need an Alberta Hemp Alliance. That's why we need a Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance. That's why we need business and everybody working through it to be able to come together and to send that message, because it is red tape that needs to be reduced. Thank you.
Tom, is there any specific piece of red tape that you're most concerned with?
Well, I guess for me the part that's confusing to a layperson is that I can understand the food aspect of hemp being under health. But why isn't everything else? I mean, 90% of hemp isn't food, or I don't know what the numbers are, but so why is that is nothing to do with health under Canada Health versus just the food portion. To me, it would make sense just to separate these two.
I'm a firm believer that sometimes you can learn enough to be dangerous, but not necessarily accurate. And so I do not stand up here as an expert on any of this, but I've learned as I've gone through this last 6 or 7 years that sometimes things that I thought should just be real easy are sometimes more complex than what I'm aware of. And I know that I've had the conversations with some of the federal politicians that come across my plate, and yeah, from their perspective, it's just not as simple and not as easy an answer as what we would like it to be. So, but it's one that I think we can do, but it's going to take a while. Any other questions? Okay. Now, there's lots of people here that I haven't met, and I will put this disclaimer on just real quickly. This was my journey, and there's lots of you that have invested time and effort into the Alberta hemp industry, and I want to thank you for that. And if we've never met, please come introduce yourself to me. I'd love to get to know you and to start a relationship with you. Okay? Thank you.